I like when in the beginning he says the topic, and then you can start the recording right away.
Intriguing topic.
Okay.
You need a presenter. That's easy.
What's the topic this week?
The topic is Chananya, Mishael, Azarya, and the frogs. And what? We didn't stop there. We had to make a longer title, huh? Just to live for the Eibishter or to die for the Eibishter. What's greater?
Really? That's a Masada? You can weave in Masada in there?
This was
Masada, they weren't doing it.
yeah. I have it on the next page.
The whole shir is in the title.
I have the Tosis on
The whole speech.
Tosis is number 5.
Oh, yeah.
Then number 7 is a Tosis in
We're
Sukkot.
not just the latest scholar.
Chaf Aleph.
Famous for this.
Oh, about the
Marshall.
this is strictly there's about explaining Rashi.
Yeah.
Mendel, we're glad you were able to join us this week.
Right. Yeah, right, to defend Russia. That's right. Oh wow. Oh boy.
Be careful.
I know. I'm always listen. With this crowd, I always have to be careful.
As soon as you saw your topic, you researched everything in the
Yeah.
Yeah, just using the top is like this. You know?
It's like what Benji did in Chicago.
Yeah. No, not sure though. I'm sure Frank had.
James, you damn be there.
You don't camp the
Yeah,
skits
yeah.
where you have to say the word before.
Already live.
And then the whole like.
Apparently, we've been starting the recordings too late.
Give a topic, like it's totally off topic what you're talking about. But you just say the words in the end. You know?
All the Pirushim of Gemara. I knew this guy was going to be super into Daf Yomi.
He's like,
Yeah.
And then he says, why don't we do Daf Yomi here instead of doing it at Shul? And then he starts pulling out like Tosfos, Rashba, yeah, and the guy's like,
the whole shit.
the guy felt like Lubavitchers are geniuses.
That's preparation.
Oh, yeah.
We went to Shul after that. We were all drunk, but we went to Shul, and they're bringing Benji to the front, giving him this.
Yeah, they told him
He's a big scholar. That's really funny.
It's like the well-known story of Gershon Mendel Gorelick, one of the first shluchim, went to Italy. The well-known story. He was heading to a.
Yes, I've heard Levi say it. Yeah.
Right. That's no
Okay, good story.
He was heading to a big conference of European rabbis, and this was 60 years ago when he had some huge guns over there. So he asked the Rebbe, what should he? What he's going to be asked to give a little pilpul. Now he wasn't a great scholar. He asked him, what should I say? The Rebbe told him to take the sefer Sha'ar Yehuda from Rabbi Yehuda Eber, who was a Lubavitcher Rosh Yeshiva in Warsaw and then at Votsk, till he was murdered by the Nazis. Yamach Shemam. And the Rebbe said, look at something over there. So he takes the sefer, he reads a piece, he prepares a little shir. Comes to the conference, he's in line to speak. He's not the first, and he was a young man. Before him, one of the big European rabbis speaks on the same topic. Not just that, he asked the same kasha as him. And Gershon Mendel is biting his nails. You know, what's he gonna say now? Halfway through the guy's drosha, the guy starts coughing. He had an issue with his back. He couldn't finish the shir. Gershon Mendel gets up and said, you know what? I had something to say, but you know what? I'll just continue where he left off. And he answered with Yehuda Eber's answers, and it was unbelievable.
It's like the story that out there with
the guy with the two people who came in with the trial.
With the carriage.
Yeah, the trial. They saw the guy in the.
Yeah, they came to the Alter Rebbe.
Came about the Alter, told him about
They'll give
something.
him a bracha. The Alter Rebbe says, "What's the?"
They found after the meal that he put chili powder in the guy's food before.
What's the? What was the question that the Alter Rebbe asked him?
Something that the Tsar was looking for.
Machusa
Malchus
He doesn't go by his name. He doesn't go by his name. His name is concealed.
That's a lot of philosophy
That never happened.
minister.
There's
And
no
then the
philosophy minister.
There was.
Right.
The
and
philosophy
that's a guy.
Like a philosophy minister. That's just a.
They got the wrong
Maybe
guy.
there was
They
a
thought they were.
philosopher. They didn't have a
No,
philosophy
it was supposed to be the minister of jurisprudence,
Education?
but it ended up being the wrong guy.
The wrong guy.
He says to them, "What does it mean?" They give him the answer.
Because the Tsar just gave him that question, and if you give me the answer, I'll help you. Because I'm good friends with the other minister that they were looking for.
Yeah.
That's
They were
what the Alter
completely
Rebbe
stunned.
said.
When the Alter Rebbe had told it to them, they thought this guy's off the
Yeah,
wall.
Yeah.
So this guy's
And
Meshuggah.
look,
They
they were
wasted their
upset.
money.
Yeah, and then they were struck by lightning, stopped in their tracks. Right.
The great thing about America was in Belgium. That the Rav over there didn't really like the Lavagers, but he wasn't like against. I don't know. He would let them in, but he wasn't very nice to them. I think one of the things you have to do to go on America was you have to like just learn a pilpul. in the early days. So this Bachar learned up a pilpul that was like slugged up or a shash. And he comes there and he tells, the Rav, figured maybe he'll tell him about Torah, maybe he'll get on his good side. He says, you're going to tell me about Torah? I'm a student of the Rashash. He says, Rashash, I have a question on the Rashash. And he goes and he slugs him up, and then he answers, and he slugs him up again. Kids are, from then on, he didn't mind Lubavitch.
Right, beautiful. Yeah, you see, the Eibishter helps.
Yeah.
The Eibishter helps. Fine. The Abter Rebbe, Avram Yeshua, the Abter of, also, Avram Yeshua Heschel of Abter, who was a contemporary of the Alter Rebbe. He was a bit of an antagonist against Chassidus Chabad, but he was a great man, and he once touched the pasuk that Bilam said, Tomos nafshi mois yishorim, may my soul die the death of the righteous, usihi acharisi kamoyu, and may my end be like him. Bilam meant many things with that. One of them was he was hoping he would die like the others by the kiss of God, etc., etc. But the Abter Rebbe touched like this. Tomos nafshi mois yishorim is when a Yid desires to die al Kiddush Hashem. I wish I died al Kiddush Hashem. But then Bilam finishes, no. You know what's even greater? Usihi acharisi kamoyu. I should hang around and I should live, and my life should continue to be in a state of Mesidus Nefesh, and that's greater.
Bilam said this?
Well, it's a prophecy in Parshas Balak. It was part of his nevuah. So the vort is that living al Kiddush Hashem is a greater feat. It's a greater accomplishment to live al Kiddush Hashem than to die al Kiddush. Dying al Kiddush Hashem is a one-time thing. Living with it is much harder. In fact, that's why we say that the Aked is always, on the one hand, it's called Aked, it's Yitzchak. Yitzchak was bound. But we say, Holikim Nisus Avraham, Hashem tested Avraham. Because Yitzchak was going to die a one-time thing. Avraham was going to live with it. It's a similar idea. But for a Yid to live in Golus and constantly give himself over to the Eibishter is a harder test because it's constant. It's constant. Anyhow, so that's always been a shayla, dying al Kiddush Hashem or living al Kiddush Hashem. And we have a fascinating discussion. In fact, the bulk of our discussion is not even on the paper. but it won't take too long. We're going to discuss an incredible tshuva of the Shavus Yaakov. A mind-boggling idea. But we begin number one. Number one is a story in Sefer Daniel, and the connection to this week's parsha we will see. We'll read some Aramaic. We did some Aramaic a few weeks ago. Some people liked it. Some people hated it. Well, listen. Can't make everybody happy. Here's a bit of Aramaic. This is Nebuchadnezzar after he destroys the Beis Hamikdash. He is in Bavel, and in the Bikas Dura, in the valley of Dura, he sets up a huge image, 60 amos tall, 30 meters, 100 feet tall, very tall. And everyone must bow. Whoever does not is liable to be burnt immediately. Nebuchadnezzar is informed by some of his officers, advisors. They tell him there's a few Jews who are resisting. Who are they? Chananya, Mishael, and Azarya. Now Nebuchadnezzar knew them well. In fact, 11 years before the Churban, Nebuchadnezzar traveled to Eretz Yisrael to capture the Jewish king of the time, Yehoiakim, who had rebelled against Nebuchadnezzar. And in place of Yehoiakim, Nebuchadnezzar places Yehoiakim's son Yechoniah. And right away he takes Yechoniah as well. And together with Yechoniah, when he schlepped him to Bavel, he took thousands of anyone that was worth their weight in salt, anyone that had something to add to the Babylonian infrastructure and the arts and the sciences. He schlepped to Bavel. He schlepped Daniel, he schlepped Mordechai, he schlepped Yechezkel, he schleps Chananya, Mishael, and Azarya. Some say Esther was a little girl then as well. Nebuchadnezzar schleps them all to Bavel. And Chananya, Mishael, Azarya, and Daniel, all four of them, he brings to his palace. And he loved these guys. But now Nebuchadnezzar is told Chananya, Mishael, and Azarya are defying the edict. One day Nebuchadnezzar responded, Va'amar Lohin, he said, Hatsta, which means like, are you being serious? Or it means, is it small in your eyes? Shadrach, Meshach, Va'aved Nagoy. Those are the names, the Aramaic names of Chananya, Mishael, Azarya. Leloikoi loy seichen polchen. You're not bowing down to my God.
What does that mean, Aramaic names?
I don't know, but that's just Aramaic names. I don't know.
Like that's what they were called then?
Yeah, Chananya, when they were taken into the palace in Babylon, the minister that was in charge of them said, you're not Chananya, you're Shadrach. You're not Mishael, you're Meshach. Yeah. Yeah, Aved Nagoy is Azarya, yeah.
That makes some sense.
It's like a tough nut.
Azarya, God help you.
Oh yeah, Taka, that is stuff?
What?
I mean, is that why Daniel was called
yeah.
Asaf?
Well, you also had, that was a Persian name.
Yeah,
Looks like.
another
This
name
is
that was
a,
Babylonian name.
this is
Got it.
Belt Shatzar.
So random, okay.
So he says, Lo yiseichen polchen. You're not bowing to my God. Ulitzelam dava diakemis, and to the golden statue that I erected, lo sogdin, you do not prostrate yourself. Ka'an, now, hein yiseichen asidin, you will in the future, di be'idona at the time, di sishmon, when you hear kol, the voice of Karn of the horn, mashroi kisa, kasrois, sabka, psanterin, sumponya. All of these are types of instruments. It could be a symphony. Sumpanya is from the word symphony. These are all types of instruments that they would blow. V'chol zanei zmor, all types of zimra. When you hear that tiplun, you must fall. V'siskadun, you must bow. L'tzalma diavdes, to the tzelem that I made. V'hein losses, if you don't. Ba'shaita, on the spot. Sisramun, you will be cast. L'goya atun noira, into the fire, to the flaming fire. Umanu alakan, who is God? The Yeshez vinchum yadai, who's going to save you from me? Now, he already heard that they had defied the order, but because he liked them, he's giving them a second chance. Anoi Shadrach, and they... Right, yeah, we're going to get to that, yeah. Shadrach, Meshach, Va'aved Nagoy, they responded, Va'armin, they said to the king, Nebuchadnezzar, Lo chashchin anachno, we are not concerned. Al dona piskam, on this matter, lahasavusach, to respond to you. Hein Isaiah lakana de anachno polchin. It's true, the God that we bow down to, Yachil l'sheizav vusana, is able to save us. Min atun nudo yakidito, from this burning fire. Umin yadach, and from your hand, Malka, O king, Yesheziv, he will save us. Vehein law, and even if God won't save us, Yediya leve loch Malka, let it be known to you, king. Dilelekach lo isana pochim, we will not bow down, we will not serve your God. Uletzelem dava diakemta, and to the golden image lo niskud, we will not prostrate ourselves. And that's what we have here. And we know that Nebuchadnezzar became infuriated and he had them chucked into the fire. He told his officers to increase the heat sevenfold. All the officers that were involved in the increasing of the heat died. And the three people, Chananya, Mishael, Azarya, survived. Now, Right. Now, one issue we're going to see is, did they know they would survive, or did they think they would die, or were they unsure? We're going to. It's actually very negay. We're going to come back to it. We're gonna, these are all right.
Were they Nevi'im, so they probably didn't know?
Nevi'im don't know everything, only what God reveals to them. There's something called Hashem Helim Imeni. The Eibishter can hide things from the greatest Navi. Fine. What does that have to do with this week's parsha? So, in Va'eda we have the Tzfardim. What are the Tzfardim? The Pashtus most believe they were frogs, because the Medrash speaks about how they were makarka, they were croaking. Rabbeinu Chananel, one of the earliest of the Rishonim, says they were crocodiles.
Also the Barbanel.
Yeah, well, and the Ramban brings that it was crocodiles, because it says in Tehillim that there was Orov, the Eibishter sent the Orov, Utzfardeya, and the Tzfardeya v'tashchisim, and the Tzfardeya destroyed them. Why does David HaMelech put Orov and Tzfardeya next to each other? They didn't happen that way. It was Dam, Tzfardeya, Kinim, then Orov. Yet in Tehillim, David HaMelech says Orov and Tzfardeya in the same pasuk. And what does it mean that Tzfardeya v'tashchisim, that it destroyed Mitzrayim? What frogs just croak. Is a raya that they were mashchisim, it was a destructive force. They were alligators, crocodiles. It was mamish like the mak of Orv, was wild beasts. The Medrash speaks about them croaking. So the Netziv believes that they were both. The Netziv says there were two types of tzfardim. There were the frogs, and there were crocodiles.
Crocodiles are kind of able to croak, though.
I've never had the opportunity to hear a crocodile. What do you mean? But yeah, listen, the alligators croak, only crocodiles.
This is why the Nile crocodile is known as
Because everyone.
They bellow in the water and it makes a
I understand, like when a big
Because
crocodile just in the breath.
People have studied all the differences of alligators and crocodiles, and I don't remember coming across the differences if they croak or not. Unless an alligator also makes this. They both do. Fine. So the Netziv says that what was the difference? The frogs filled up the entire land, and they were croaking, machshich meshuggah. But the crocodiles were the ones that entered the homes. Now I would have thought fakert, the crocodiles would be on the streets and the frogs entered the homes. He says no, the crocodiles were in the homes and the frogs on the street. So he says they were both there. Others Taina know it was only frogs, but there's a certain giant toad. There's a giant frog that actually has a certain Latin name, which is so big and vicious that it can destroy other animals. It can rip other animals apart. And no. He says it was crocodiles, and Netziv says both true. Fine. Al Koponim, so we have these Tzfardim. By the way, Tzfardeya, Tzfar in Aramaic is Tzafra, means the morning. Dea means to know. Frogs know when it's the morning. They croak at night, changes in the morning. Tzfardei, they know when the morning comes. You know what the Abarbanel does say? Why did God send Tzfardim that were croaking away? Because when the Jewish women were giving birth, they couldn't make a sound. They wanted to conceal the birth of their kids, and the Hashem wouldn't come after them. So these frogs were, all the noise the frogs were giving the Mitzrayim a headache. This was all the making up for all the music, the noise of the pregnant Jewish women when they had childbirth, that they had to restrain themselves. Now the Mitzrayim are going to hear the noise. I once saw that Avigdor Miller, he writes that when the Mitzrayim saw the frogs coming out of the water, to them it was the biggest nightmare. They imagined that these were those babies that they had thrown into the water, and those babies were all coming back as these are frightening frogs.
This is the dagger I see before me.
That's what Avigdor Miller said. Sounds like a horror video.
Yowls coming out of the river, croaking.
All the babies coming out in the guise of these frogs. Anyhow, but let's go weiter. Number 2. To Gemara Psachim, Oidzu Dodash Tudus Ishloimi. Tudus, a man of Rome, gave the following drasha. Maro Chananya Mishael Azarya. Why did they see fit Shemosru Atzmon? They gave themselves al Kedushas Hashem to die. L'kiv Shoneish. Why did they decide to die? They should have bowed down. L'chayra. That seems to be his question. His answer is Nosul Kavachoyme Ba'atzmon. They made a Kavachoyme Tzfardim from the dogs. From the frogs, pardon me. Umat Tzfardim, just like the frogs. She'ein mitzuvin al Kedushas Hashem. Frogs have no mitzvah to sanctify God's name. Right? They don't b'chlal of mitzvahs. Ksiv buhu, nonetheless, it says about them in this week's parsha that Paro is told, Ubohu v'olu b'veisecha, they will enter your homes, u'b'tanarecha, into your ovens, u'mishasecha, into your kneading bowls. Ein mosai misharis mitzuyis eitzel taner. When is a kneading bowl where you knead dough next to the oven? When the oven is on and ready for the dough to be thrown in. The tanner was hot, and the frogs went in. So onu as yidin shemetzuven al kedusa. We have a mitzvah of kiddush Hashem. Allah has come for sure, and they threw themselves into the fire.
Well, what's the basis of the question for him asking? Isn't it obvious that they would do it?
That's a great question. That's a great question. It's a great question. So first of all, when the Azarya, during one of his travels, apparently he came to Vilna, and he heard there's a brilliant child by the name of Rebbe Eliyahu, the Vilna Gaon. Some say the Vilna Gaon was about 7 years old at the time. It's possible the Vilna Gaon was born in 1720. The Azarya is born in the early 1690s. And the Azarya asked the boy about this Gemara. How could Tuda say that the frogs had no mitzvah to die? The Eibishter says that the frogs have to enter into the oven. That means the frogs had to go. Yeah, they don't have a general mitzvah on Kiddush Hashem. They don't have any mitzvahs. But punkt, in this Inyan, they were foretold they have to go into the ovens. That's why they went in. So the Vilna Gaon said, lots of frogs, right? Each frog could have said about itself, let my friend go into the oven. I'm going to go into the beds. I'll go into the houses. No individual frog had to be the one to take upon itself to go to the oven. And they say the Azarya gave the boy a kiss. I don't know, that's the story the Litvishers say. There's another story they say that it must have been later on that the Azarya met the Vilna Gaon years later, and he asked him a massive kasha that he had. And he had asked this to many people and no one gave him an answer, a good answer. He asked it to the Vilna Gaon was quiet. The Azarya then, he left. About a mile away from the city, he sees there's someone running next to the carriage. The Vilna Gaon had ran all the way. He stops the Azarya's carriage. He gives him the answer, a great answer. So the Azarya said, "Taka Gaon, but minus a mile." They took you. Anyhow, but who knows? These are the legends. We absolutely do not. We do not. There was a literature, Rabbi Eisel Chodef. It's 150 years now from his Petira. He was a misnagid, one of the big literature geniuses 200 years ago. And he once came into yeshiva and he says, I'm going to ask you guys a whopping kasha. Anyone gives the answer, you'll be my son-in-law. He presents the kasha, the Bochum are scratching their heads, no one has an answer. So he says, all right. And he leaves, and he gets in his wagon. And all of a sudden, someone bangs on the door. He opens the wagons. He says, oh, you have the answer? The Baruch says, no, but I want to hear the answer. I can't let you leave without giving me the answer. Oh, you'll be my son-in-law. I guess, say that. That's it. Plan B, right? At least the guy that wants the answer. Anyhow, all right. So, in order to explore this further, we're going to see some fascinating things. But we need a bit of background, just a bit of background. And the background starts with the following. Look at number 3. When it comes to the mitzvah of Kiddush Hashem, so there's a number of important details and also some major arguments. And let's have a look. We're going to see the Rambam's opinion. Now you should know that Rambam's opinion is not unanimous by any means. But the Rambam does do a good job of giving a Klarkeit. Kol Beis Yisrael, every Jew has a mitzvah on Kiddush Hashem. It says, V'niktashti b'seich b'nei Yisrael, Parshas Emer. Every Yid must sanctify God's name. Keitzad, how? In the 4th line, if a goy gets up and he forces a Yid la'avar al achas mikol mitzvahs. If a goy says, I want you to eat the treif, I want you to wear the shatnez, or I'll kill you, Yavar, eat the treif, loy, don't be killed. Because it says by mitzvahs, asher yaseh oisam ha'adam v'chaybim, it says in Parshas Achreimus, the Eibishter wants us to live with mitzvahs. A mitzvah should not be the cause of a person to die. Instead of dying not to violate the mitzvah and keep yourself alive. V'loy sheyamus ben, they should not cause your death. So it's funny, the Rambam starts off by saying Keitzad. What's the question of Keitzad? He wants to describe the mitzvah of Kiddush Hashem, and the first example he says is a case where you actually do the Aveira, not a case where you should die. It's kind of a funny way to start. So J.B. Soloveitchik would always say, this is also part of Kiddush Hashem. Doing the Aveira to keep yourself alive so you can do more mitzvahs, that's also sanctifying God's name. Keeping a Yiddish or Yid alive is a Kiddush Hashem. Keeping the neshama inside the body also sanctifies God's name.
So Rabbi Anderson and his brother in the jail cell. Not davening here with the toilet.
No,
Reb
Zusha.
Close.
Not close. I knew the jail cell and there were 2 brothers.
Anyhow, and the Rambam classically holds you have to eat the treif, you have to break the Shabbos, you got to wear the shatnez, etc., etc. Ve'im meis, and if you decide to die, v'loy over, not to transgress, suicide. Ha'izeh mischayev benafshe. The Rambam holds, if you're allowed to do the Aveira, you must. It's not arbitrary. You don't have a choice to play with your life. If you decide to take your life or let the guy kill you, it's suicide. Now, most actually disagree with the Rambam on that point, as we'll see. But continues the Rambam, Bamed v'odem amurim, when do I say this, that you should do the Aveira? B'shar mitzvahs, by the other 610. Except for Avodah Zarah, Gilead Ayis, and murder. Avol sholosh Aveiros Eilu, it's a different kettle of fish. Im Yoimele, if the guy says, or a Yid says, doesn't matter who, Aver al achasmen, I want you to transgress one of these three. Oite horeg, or if you won't, you'll die. Yehoreg, you must die. Val Yaver, you cannot transgress. Okay, so far so good. That's pretty clear. Continues the Rambam, Bamed vor mamurim, when did I say in Halacha Aleph that when it comes to regular mitzvahs, do the Aveira, is only bisman shahagoy miskaven lahanoas atzmoi. If the goy wants you to break Shabbos to cook for him, the guy wants you to eat treif, he cooked the food. He's offended if you don't eat it. It's for his hanoah. Kagoin sha'anser livna lebayis b'Shabbos, build the house on Shabbos, or he wants you to cook for him on Shabbos, or anes isha lebala, or he wants you to.
Marry his daughter?
No, I think it's probably supposed to mean if the woman forces him to be with her for her benefit. Now, it's Gili Arayas, could be a goy. According to many, to be with a goy is not Yehoy. It's a big machlokes in the Rishonim. But either way, Aval im niskaven. Now, or it could be this guy just wants you to rape a woman to mess up that person's family, whatever the reason. Anyhow, aval im niskaven lahaviri al mitzvahs bavad. But if the guy wants you to eat the treif just because he wants you to eat treif, so then it depends if it's public or private. Im hoyebeinu lebein atzmo, if it's just the two of you, the ein shom asar mishal, there's no 10 people, then still yaver, do the aver, al yorg, don't die. But if it's public, im ansei la'aviroi ba'asar mishal, if there's 10 Jewish people, and the guy's doing it just to spite you, so it checks those two boxes. A, it's dafka to harass you as a Jew,
So
and
not
B,
just to build him a house.
Right. It's dafka lahaviri ala mitzvahs. He gets nothing from it. He just wants you to break Shabbos just because, and it's in public. Then any mitzvah, says the Rambam, yeharag val yarv, you must die. Afilu lo niskaven lahaviri, even if it's only shar mitzvahs b'vad. So the Rambam's saying very clearly, if it's the big three, it doesn't matter what the circumstances. You have to die. If it's other mitzvahs, then it depends. If it's other mitzvahs and it has the two checks, A, it's in public, B, it's lahaviri aladas, just to make you do the aveira, then any mitzvah you have to die. But if it doesn't have if you can't tick both of those boxes, if it's in private, or even if it's public, but the guy wants you just to build his house on Shabbos, then you would have to do the aveira. You have no right to die. Halacha Gimel, the Rambam adds one clause. V'chol hadvarim ha'elu is only if it's shaloi b'shas hashmad, regular times. But if it's shas hashmad, which means a king like Nebuchadnezzar and his friends, and their geyser, the spiritual destruction against the Jews to destroy their religion or other mitzvahs, then it's yehoreg v'al yaver on anything. You have to die.
I have a question.
Afilu al achas mishar ha-mitzvahs, bein nenes besoich hasora, bein nenes beinoyle ben goyim. So if it's shas hashmad, then first of all, we always consider it that it's lahavira yaldas, and you don't need to check the other box of being in public. So no matter what the mitzvah is, you always have to
It
die.
has to be a king. What if it's like masculine?
Shas hashmad, it means someone in great authority.
Power.
Yeah.
So I have a question.
Even
Then
though-
why was the Rambam telling people to hide that they were Jewish during the
Like,
times of
what does that mean?
Almohads?
Sorry?
Not just
Why
Shmad.
was the Rambam
saying
telling
you
people
like
to hide that they're
Renaissance and
Jewish
everything,
during the
like,
times
you
of
know,
the
but
Almohads? That's what-
But he himself wasn't, he made us an engine. Like,
And
what's
it
the
seems like he's going
question?
against exactly what he said over here.
Crusades or
Like it has to be
Spanish
blatant
Inquisition.
like that.
Yeah, it can't be like, oh, marry the shiksa, or like enticing you to marry a shiksa. That's
No.
not Shas Hashmad. I imagine it's do this or convert or die.
Yeah.
So what's your answer?
There.
Hiding you're Jewish but not breaking anything? Like,
I'm assuming that to hide you're Jewish, you had to break things.
Who's the Almans?
They were the before the Christians made the Inquisition. The first ones to do it in Spain were actually the Muslims.
Wasn't an Inquisition.
There's
cities down there.
hiding their Jewishness would mean that they don't do things openly.
I'm not saying I didn't.
Here
say
we're
the
talking
Spanish
about
expelled them, it's the Inquisition, looking for people who are Jewish and trying to kill
Wasn't
them.
like the Inquisition. Far I know.
if they would be asked to do a small avera and a shas hashmad l'chayra based on this rule.
There's
The Rambam does. Okay, first of all, the Rambam does write in a letter that even in a letter he writes that even this halacha of gimel, even the shas hashmad is only if the person who's forcing you is doing it dafka lahavira yaldas. You have to know it for a fact. From here it just seems you would always assume it's lahavira yaldas, but the Rambam says you have to know it for a fact. In addition, I don't know. The question is, were they a melech? And they went from town to town. That it was all temporary until the Reconquistita, until the Christians regained it.
Yeah, that's
But let's okay.
for a period of 100 years.
All right, I hear the question. Fine. So this is the Rambam's opinion. Let's just see some other opinions on the matter over here before we get really to the crux of the issue. Look at number 4. Number 4 is a note of the Rebbe in Likutei Sichos. It's a sicha actually in Parshas Vayeshev about how Yosef listened to his father to check up on his brothers, knowing his brothers might kill him. He's putting his life in danger to do the mitzvah of Kibud Av. You know what I mean? He's sacrificing his life for Stama mitzvah. According to the Rambam, you can't do that. The Rambam holds if it's not part of the big three, you have no right to give up your life. So Yosef should have told his father no. Yosef should have said, this type of mitzvah, I can't give up my life for this, if he assumed his brothers would kill him. So that's what, okay, correct. The Rebbe does make mention of that. The point is the Rebbe has a note over here. And the Rebbe collects a number of opinions, so it's a great place to look. Look at number 4. Va'af, even though shedin zeh im yirtze lahachmir al atzmo v'lehoreg. If somebody wants to be machmir on himself, and by a regular mitzvah, I'm not going to do the avera, I'm going to die. Does he have the right to be machmir? The Rambam unequivocally holds no. Being machmir is suicide. But there are opinions who allow it. So maybe Yosef HaTzadik was relying on those opinions that you're allowed to give up your life for any mitzvah. So the Rebbe says, even though this din that if you want to be machmir on yourself and be killed, you're allowed, is only im ha'aku mechavan lahavira yaldas. And he quotes Shulchan Aruch Yeredeya. What's Rabbi Yosef Kaira saying? Rabbi Yosef Kaira is saying, in the world of the Rambam, if it's not Shas Hashmad, if it's a regular time and the guy wants you to break Shabbos, the Rambam holds that you only die if it checks 2 boxes. A, it's public. B, it's dafka to spite Yiddishkeit. But if you don't check both boxes, even if you check one, you have to do the Avera. So those opinions who hold you're allowed to die, but is that even if neither box is checked, or maybe one of the boxes have to be checked? So Rabbi Yosef Kaira says those that allow you to die argue in the Rambam and hold you don't have to check both boxes, but one box has to be checked. Namely, the one that the guy is doing it to spite you, even though it's private. So let's say the guy wants you to break Shabbos, it's just the 2 of you. The Rambam will say you don't check the box of public, so you have to break Shabbos. Those that argue and say you can give up your life would hold then. Why? Because you do check the box of the guy's doing it to spite. If the guy wants you to do it for his benefit, then even those that argue on the Rambam will say that box ain't going to help you. You have to check the box that the guy is doing it to spite Yiddishkeit. And v'nikra choyvel ba'atzma, you're called suicide, v'tzarech laver, you must do the avera and not die. And this is from the Shach, quoting from Rabbeinu Yerucham. V'harei benitten dedam by Yosef, ein kan inyan lahaver al das. By Yosef, no one's trying to make him be over any averis, right? So what right does he have to put himself in danger? So the Rebbe points out, that's taka one school of thought. But there's another school of thought. Hari ladas kama rishonim, some rishonim hold no. Gam kishe'ein hakavona lahavir, even if you don't check that box, you're allowed to take your life. You're allowed to be killed. Who says the smak mitzvah gimel? We saw this smack last week about the story of Yehuda Chassidus, the students on the way to the Chassan, they were all killed, right? And the whole bodies were killed besides the gory story. The smack there says you have a right to always die. The Rebbe sends you to Radvaz, he sends you to Vilna Gaon, he sends you to Gemara Erevin, Toysuser, Torah Chaim and Erevin, Lechem Shemayim, that's from Yankiv Emden Va'oid, he sends you to Tshuv the Tzemach Tzedek, etc. Next paragraph he says, the Prisha, who was one of the very, very important commentators in Shulchan Aruch, 400 years ago, he tainas another opinion. Do you know when you're allowed to be machmir? If you can check the box of being in public. The other one of the two boxes. Right? The Rambam holds you have to check the box A of public, B lahavir aladas. According to the Prisha, you're allowed to be machmir and die when? If you can check the box of being public. Even though the guy wants you to build the house, because he wants a big house. But if it's public, that's enough to be machmir.
Even though it's on us, that's
Exactly. And he quotes it from the Shach. And by Yosef HaTzadik, it was before Hesia.
Makes sense. That's
Anyhow.
what Hashem is.
And then he quotes also the Shach that when we say 10 people, doesn't mean they have to be there. It's just as long as 10 people know about it.
We'll find
So
out.
what we have over here is in those that argue on the Rambam, there's three options. There's the Smak who seems to hold, you can always be machmir and die, even if you check neither box. Right? The Rambam holds you have to check both boxes. Public and lahavir aladas. The Smak seems to hold even neither box, you can still die. And then you have two other opinions, and you have to check one box. The first one is Rabbi Yosef Kaira, the Shachar ben Yerucham. You have to check the box that is to spite Judaism. The Prisha holds, no, if you check the other box of public, it's enough as well. All right, so now that we're a little educated about this topic, we can go to the next page. And we come to a whopping Tosfos. In Psachim over there, on the Gemara, we learned about Chananya, Mishael, Azarya, and the Tzfardim. It sounds from Tudus, Ishraimi, that Chananya, Mishael, Azarya really, what were they thinking? What were they thinking when they divide the Vuchanetz's eating? What were they thinking? They learned the Kavachomer from the Tzfardim. So the first Shaila is what? They had to die. Avodah Zarah? Everyone holds Avodah Zarah, you have to die. Like, what's going on? If it's in private, right. So Tosfos says like this. Look at number 5. He says, Pidish HaKuntras. Rashi explains, what were they thinking? Shaloi dorshu v'chai behem v'loi sheyamos ben. We know there's a well-known drasha we saw in the Rambam before. Mitzvahs should not cost a person their life. Better violate than live. Don't hold the mitzvah, don't sanctify the mitzvah and therefore give up your life. That was the issue with Chananya, Mishael, Azarya. And what was the answer? They learned from the Tzfardim. They learned from the frogs. Which Bechlal Zashayla, the frogs don't have a mitzvah v'chai behem. The Sfas Emes. Everybody asks, if that's the pshat, that they had no right to die because a Yid is a mitzvah to live, so how did they learn from the Tzfardim? The Tzfardim Bechlal have no mitzvah to live. But either way, Tosfos is a bigger kasha, v'kasha. The haba farhesia hava. Wait a second. Let's assume this image of Nebuchadnezzar erected was Avodah Zarah. If it was in private, are you allowed to worship or do you have to die? The Rambam said very clear, you have to die. When it comes to Avodah Zarah, there's no two ways about it. Yeah, that's the Rambam's psak. That follows the Tana Rabbi Eliezer. But he's not the only guy on the team. Rabbi Yishmael holds, if it's privately, you're allowed to serve the Avodah Zarah. So maybe Tudus, who's the guy in Psachim, holds like Rabbi Yishmael. So therefore Tosfos doesn't ask, this image was Avodah Zarah. He knows there's a way out of that question. He has a different question though. Befarhes Yahavos in public. Avodah Zarah in public, even Rabbi Yishmael agrees, you have to die. Rabbi Shmuel's leniency is Avodah Zarah privately, you can worship. But publicly, there's no two ways about it. Frek Tosfos, Umaskino, we have a conclusion in Sanhedrin. The Lekula Am, according to everyone, Befarhes, if it's publicly, Chayiv Limsar Atzma, you have to give up your life, Afilu HaMitzvah, even on a small mitzvah. What's he referring to? The psak we saw in the Rambam. If it's in public, and it's dafka to spite you, like Nebuchadnezzar Bepashtus was doing, you'd have to give up your life for anything. For sure, Avodah Zarah. So Chananya Mishael had no choice. What are you bringing this whole tzfard in the Kal Vachomer? So we come to a major debate between Rabbeinu Tam and the Ri. And we're going to see maybe another opinion as well. Umefarish Rabbeinu Tam that we have the whole story wrong. The tzelem zeh that Nebuchadnezzar made was not Avodah Zarah. It was stam, an image that he made of himself. L'koved atzmai. You're allowed about to it. It's just giving honor to it. It's giving honor to him. It's not Avodah Zarah. Ulekach kamer. That's why the Gemara says, Ma'ro. What did they see? What did they see? Because they bemis didn't have to die. In fact, Bepashtus, thousands of Yidden that were there in the valley did die. Did die. I'm sorry. They did bow down. They prostrated themselves. How could it be? Because it was, they were allowed to. They were allowed to. The Kasha of Chananya, Mishael, Azarya. And what did they learn from the Tzfardim? That the Tzfardim Bechlal have no mitzvah ever to die for the Eibishter. And they went on their own accord and they died where they didn't have to. So hey, we're going to be worse than the frogs. We are going to go in Mesidus Nefesh as well, although we don't have to.
They had no countervailing.
What?
They had no countervailing mitzvah that says you will live too.
Well, there is V'chai Behem, Bechlal.
No, the frogs didn't.
Oh, that's right. That was the Sfasem as the Shaila. So the Pashtus, now Rabbeinu Tam disagrees with the Rambam. Rabbeinu Tam Bechlal, the Chachmei Ashkenaz held much more that if a person wants to die, he always has rishus to die, right? At least if you check one of the boxes. Maybe, and we saw the Smak, who was one of the Bali Taiz, holds even if you don't check either box, you can always decide to die. And he quoted from Rabbi Yehuda HaChassid, right? When those students of Chassid died, you didn't check either box, but it was an inyan of Kiddush Hashem, and that was it. So that's Rabbeinu Tam's opinion as well. So Rabbeinu Tam holds Tamish of Azarya, it was arbitrary, they really had a choice, and they chose to do it. Now what inspired them? The frogs, that's what inspired them. Says Rabbeinu Tam, what's va'asi namish? V'chein mashma. It says, if you look in the psukim we just learned, lelekach leis anachna polchin uletzelem dedav loy nisked. The psukim divide. They said we're not going to bow down. Polchin means to serve. We're not going to serve your God, and we won't bow down to the golden image. Mashma, that these are two distinct ideas. Elokadidei, Nebuchadnezzar's God, and his tzelem are two different things. What also comes out geschmack is a Gemara in Ksuvos. Look at number 7 underneath for a moment. Check the Gemara in Ksuvos. The Gemara there is discussing what's worse, death or malchus. And you think, what's Bechlal the question? So the Gemara says, look at number 7, Dilma malchus chomer. Maybe malchus in a way is more severe than death. The Omar Rav said, Ilmole nogdu, if they would have whipped Chananya, Mishael, Azarya, Pol Chulatzalmo, they would have worshipped. Death they're willing to take because it's a one-time thing. But torture, they wouldn't have been able to handle. And the Gemara responds that Amalei Rav Soma, Breid Rav Ashi, the Rav Ashi, look at number 7, and some say Rav Som, Breid Rav Ashi, the Rav Ashi, told his father that you can't compare Malchus to everlasting torture. Loishani loch, don't you see the difference between Hakosh Yesh Lo Kitzvah? 39 whips and then it's over. But Hakosh Ein Lo Kitzvah, torture which has no end in sight, is worse than death.
What's that?
No, in other words, if Chananya Mishael would have been tortured with no end in sight, they would have
beaten him.
Right, exactly.
Saying Malchus is not that bad because you know there's an end.
So the Gemara is saying there's 3 dargas. There's Malchus, which is temporary pain.
Right.
There's death, and worse than death is exactly with no end. Torture with no end.
Sitting in a dungeon.
There's a famous thing, like in the I don't remember when it was, but it was like a Roman emperor. I think it was Antoninus. He liked to. It didn't work with his son, but he was showing him that like what's a worse kind of torture. They had 2 men, and one of them, they're both getting the same amount of whips. One man's like standing up to it, the other one's like already wilting, and it's only on 10 whips. And he's like, "What's the difference?" And he's like, "That one knows how much he's gonna get whipped, so he's like just a few more, and I'm done." This guy doesn't know, So it's a completely different.
Yeah, beautiful. There you go. Very nice.
Did they croak? Did they croak?
So now, hold on. This Gemara is of major importance for many reasons. It sounds like torture.
Running on a treadmill at the time.
Torture is worse than death. So does that mean the Gemara seems to be saying you have to die not to do avodah zarah, you have to die not to do gili arayos, but torture is worse. Many poskim learn from this Gemara taka halacha lemaisa. You're allowed to do avodah zarah to spare yourself from torture. You're allowed to do even the big three. You're allowed to do gili arayos to spare from torture. What about murder? Murder. Are you allowed to kill someone to spare yourself from torture? It's one of the big three. It's one of the big three. That's crazy. Now, I will tell you though that some Rishonim there in Ksuvas quote from a Rashi that we don't have. We'll get to that more. They quote from a Rashi that you have to know how to sing the Gemara. What Rav said was, do you think had they tortured them, would they have bowed? Would they have prostrated themselves? That's how you have to sing it.
That's a question.
So, right. No, in other words, Rav was trying to bring out the point they still would have taken the torture. So the Gemara
still making it more
exactly. So no, the Gemara is making torture worse than death, which is the point of the Gemara. But you can learn from there that you're allowed to serve avodah zarah. You still take the torture. But many Rishonim learn from here, halacha l'maisa, that torture is worse than the big three, and one of the reasons it's so important is there's a psak of Rabbeinu Tam, not here, it's in Gittin. If somebody knows that a guy is going to force you to serve avodah zarah, and he won't give you the choice to take the bullet, you're allowed to take your own life. Because since you're supposed to die instead of do the avodah zarah, and the guy is not going to do it, you're allowed to kill yourself. It sounds like all three.
The lady from the four, that traveled.
Yeah. She jumped. She asked, "Will I have a chelik on Haba?" And she jumped off. Right, exactly. She jumped off. Nebuch, her husband, her kid was there. Yeah. So Rabbeinu Tam learns it from a story in Gittin that the Romans had captured hundreds of girls and boys, were taking them to Rome, and the girls knew and the girls jumped off. Rabbeinu Tam and the boys as well. Rabbeinu Tam says, you see from here that if you know you're going to be sucked into one of the huge averis and you won't be given the choice to die, then you could do it to yourself. Now that makes sense. In that case, suicide's okay. So here's the thing though. I remember having a debate years ago. If someone was on top of the World Trade Center and they see what's happening, are they allowed to jump? There's videos where they actually captured people jump. It's horrible to see.
Because they didn't want to get burned.
And to save themselves from torture. If someone knows for sure there's going to be torture, can they jump? So I was a bocher. I was a young bocher. What?
First got to call your love and give a get.
Even if the sword's falling on your neck.
Right. Al yimnas marachim. But we had a shir. Once that's only by a melech. Because a melech is like a tzibur, and by a tzibur, even if Hashem made a gzar din, you could break it. But so I remember I was discussing. I was in a yeshiva, and there was a Litvish guy there, 10 years older than me, a scholarly fellow. We were having the debate actually in the dormitory in a bedroom, and this guy said, "No, you're not allowed to jump. You're not allowed to jump. Suicide." And it didn't resonate with me. It didn't resonate. It didn't make sense with me. And I'm not going to say what the halacha is, but I'll tell you a powerful argument why you should be allowed to jump. And that's like this. Assuming the Gemara number 7 is bepashtus, that if torture is happening, then you're allowed to give up, then you're allowed to do the big 3, right? So imagine like this.
You're allowed to
Hold on.
If you're going to get
Wait,
tortured.
hold on.
Hold on.
That's the right I'm going to bring. Hold on. That's exactly what that if someone's going to force you to do avodah zarah and not give you the way out of death, Rabbeinu Tam, Paston, and Gittin, you could do it yourself. Which means suicide is the better option than serving avodah zarah. Avodah zarah is more serious. The Gemara in Ksuvas number 7 says, better do avodah zarah than suffer torture, which means torture is worse. So you have suicide, avodah zarah is more serious, more than that is torture. So then for sure you should be allowed to kill yourself to save yourself from torture. That would be the argument. That would be the argument.
What?
And
No.
yeah, there's if you're allowed. Hold on.
But it makes sense.
Let's build it up. You're allowed to take your life, knowing you'll be forced to do avodah zarah. If the guy is not going to give you the choice, Rabbeinu Tam paskins in Gittin, Masechta Gittin, you're allowed to take your life. Fine, which means taking your life is preferable and more lenient than actually serving idols. Like, don't even go there. We see in number 7 that torture is more up to better serve idols than torture. Don't even go to torture. So for sure you should be able to take your life than have to suffer torture.
Not to mention if you have a frog.
No, in reverse, in instead of doing idols, not stam.
No, but you have like A, B, and C.
No,
It's,
This team beat that team, and that team beat the other team. This team beat the other team.
benefit torture that would be
not
for a
the
short
one.
amount of time, but after that you'd be
No?
able to survive.
yeah, well, that the Gemara says is less than that.
You can't just do it stam.
If the Jets beat the Patriots.
Anyhow.
Yeah, exactly.
But so by Shaul, when Shaul took his life,
We're gonna play the game.
many hold the reason that Shaul took his life was many hold that Shaul took his own life
So you thought it
to
was
spare himself from the torture the Plishtim would put him through. Now there's a big machlokes to show him if Shaul did a sin or Shaul was good. We saw in the smack last week, Shaul was right. He was allowed to do it. And if the reason is to spare himself from torture, so that would be just another riot.
Torture.
Yeah, he was gonna get
Yeah, they were
captured.
they would do who knows what. They would just torture him and torture him and torture him. Anyhow, so this would be an argument that if someone knows for sure, they're gonna. Yeah, unless you're tiny, you're saying that in the World Trade Center, if the fire is going to get to you, it's not going to be.
I'm saying the question.
It's not going to be perpetual Yisurim. It's only going to be a short amount of time
Well,
until.
it's
Let's
but-
check it
but-
out.
getting burned to death is a pretty
It's
severe.
horrible. It's horrible. Anyhow. But let's go weiter. Oh.
Well, the Moranos took the art of the faith instead of serving them.
So according
All
to
right.
you, that's
Hold,
halacha.
according to me. Oh, I didn't say what you could or shouldn't do.
Asia also?
They weren't Mohammeds, they were,
He clearly prefaced with, I'm not saying the halacha,
No,
but
they were allowed
The
to
same logic?
There's a story. I'll
Every
bring you
single
another
Morano
right.
got an option.
There's a
They could
story
get
in
paid.
Masechta Avodah Zarah. Rabbi
If
Chananya ben
they
Trajan
switched
was
to
wrapped with the Sefer
Christianity,
Torah.
or
They
could
were
be
burning him,
blind if they did.
but they put wet cotton on his stomach and chest.
Every
he told the guy to speed it up and go to
uh,
Elam Haba with him, no?
Right, to increase the fire. But the students, Rabbi Chanina's students, told him just to take his own life. But Chanina said, let the Abish to do it. I'm not going to do it myself. But the students told him that he should do it. So isn't that a right? Halachically, he'd be allowed to do it. That's mamish like the World Trade Center.
that who?
The students told Chanina ben Trajan, take
out
off
the whole
the.
Torah part.
Just
though.
let yourself
you're
die.
taking out the whole that they're doing it because of not being a Jew. The World Trade Center, you're not going against Shabbos or anything.
No, but
not just-
the
that's
Vart was
very part of
Yisurim.
it.
The Vart is dying through Yisurim.
Because
versus
of
doing that.
doing
I said-
Torah.
Listen.
Torah is the principle.
It,
here.
it makes sense if you're in a room.
Malachos
It
and
makes
Torah.
sense if you're in a room and a guy is slowly killing you and you have a gun, you should shoot yourself. I don't know. To me, it makes a lot of sense. And I think, anyhow, but either way, what?
Torture.
Or
I'm in a
you-
car, someone's driving insane. I can jump out now and kill myself. Like, what does that mean?
No, but if it's a vada, if it's a vada,
Cutting off pieces of your skin.
if it's a
You're
vada,
That's
if
not
you're in the
Yisurim.
World Trade
That's
Center,
not Yisurim to be in a car with someone driving
It's
insane.
I've been in cars with trying to use camp buff.
anyhow, hold on.
Jump out and kill yourself. 'cause why not?
Hold on. All right. So here's the thing, though. So when it comes to that Gemara number 7, so first of all, we said that Rashi learned the whole Gemara differently. Rav was saying it in the kind of, do you think they would have bowed down? They still wouldn't have, right? So then that Gemara won't help us. Only if you learn it simply, that they actually would have bowed down, teaches you that torture is the worst. But Rabbeinu Tam has a whole different spin. Rabbeinu Tam says the image of Nebuchadnezzar wasn't B'chlal Avodah Zarah. Rabbeinu Tam says, do you know why the Gemara says in number 7 that had they been tortured, they would have bowed down? Because it wasn't Avodah Zarah. It was only a chumrah they decided to die. Death they were willing to do, not torture.
So
But Rabbeinu Tam holds Lamaisa, you're not allowed to serve Avodah Zarah mamish to save yourself from torture. So going back to Tosfos in number 5, Rabbeinu Tam says, now that I've told you that this image of Nebuchadnezzar, Bechlal was only for his honor, The Asi Nami Shaper, back to number 5, 2/3 of the way in. This that we saying Ksuvis, Ilmale Nogd, if they would have whipped Azarya, they would have bowed down the Tzalma, to the image. Frek Rabbeinu Tam, if it's Avodah Zarah, you think Chananya would have bowed down to save themselves from torture? You think they would have bowed down? Beferish not. So Rabbeinu Tam's opinion is, Rabbeinu Tam himself holds that torture and death are in the same thing. You have to do both of them before you worship idols. The whole Shulchan Aruch it wasn't idols. It was Stam the V'chanetz's Meshugas. People should show him honor.
This only works if you're going to say that it's because you only have to check off one box because of public, right?
Or he holds like the smack. You don't have to check over either box. Because was this in public? The Pashtus it was in public, but Rabbi Korf mentioned a Marsha. You see, the Tosfos has thrown Rashi completely out the window. Rashi says Chananya Mishael Azarya should have bowed down because Bechlal the Eibishter wants a person to live, not to die. And Tosfos says, that's rubbish. Everyone knows that by Avodah Zarah. So what's Pshat in Rashi? So the Marsha says Rashi holds that the guy speaking here to this holds like Rabbi Yishmael, that in private, even by Avodah Zarah, you're allowed to worship. And this was in private. There was this huge statue in the valley. Marsha says it was private. There weren't 10 Jews there. There were not 10 Jews there. It's a valley. There weren't 10 Jews. So Marsha says it was private. That's not the way you understand the story. In order to defend Rashi, he says that. Anyhow, either way, this is Rabbeinu Tam. So Rabbeinu Tam is a whopper. Says Tosfos, Umia, however, Lashon Polchul lo yasi shaper. The Gemara says in Ksuvas Polchul. Polchul in Aramaic means to worship. Segidu means to bow down. Polchul means to worship. If this was just an image of Nebuchadnezzar, there's no worship. So therefore, Tosfos quotes from the Ri. The Ri argues Rabbeinu Tam. Rabbeinu Tam's nephew. The Ri almost, he as much as he respected his uncle, he has no problem arguing. Although we do have a letter from the Ri, a halachic letter, where he says about a certain issue, in theory I disagree with my uncle, but who am I? I'm not going to argue against his psak. But listen, here he argues. Mefarish, the Ri says, you know what the issue was? Shaloi Borchu, why didn't they run away? Shari Koidim Amaisa, before the event, they could have ran away, just like Daniel did, as the Gemara says in Sanhedrin, Daf Tzaddik Gimel. What's he talking about? Look at number 6. Daniel was also in Bavel. Nebuchadnezzar loved Daniel. In fact, he referred to Daniel as a deity, as a god. Look at number 6. Daniel lehechonazo. Where was Daniel during this saga? On my Rav said that Nebuchadnezzar sent Daniel on the most random mission. Lemichra, to dig Nara Rabba, to dig a river in Tiberia. To get busy. He told Daniel, get out of town. I don't want you to be here this day because I know you're not going to bow down and I don't want to kill you. Exactly. Shmuel says, Lasuyi bizra da aspasta, to bring aspasta seeds. It's some type of animal food. Rabbi Yochanan Omar, Nebuchadnezzar sent him, Lasuyi, to bring chaziri, to bring pigs from Alexandria of Egypt. To bring it to Babylon. Correcting Gemara, it's not true. There was
Alexandria didn't exist yet.
That area. Didn't have a name.
He built the city when he went there.
Okay.
That's Alexandria. There was
But there were
living
farms.
there.
There were farms. There were dogs. There were dogs.
It doesn't have to be
It's on the water.
geographical
It's on the
location.
water.
It's
It's,
on the water. It was
like one of the only
definitely
places in
populated
Egypt that
area.
has a bit of green.
It had obviously
Yes. They clearly
Like say in San Francisco in the 1700s, in that
the area
area.
of Alexandria was famous.
All right. So, the truth is a crazy thing. There's a medrash that says when Alexander the Great built Alexandria, he took the remains of Yirmiyah. There's a medrash that says Yirmiyah was murdered in Egypt by the Yidden. The Yidden murdered Yirmiyah. They buried him maybe near Cairo or something. And when Alexander built Alexandria, he took the cave of Yirmiyah and he wanted that to be a shrine in the city of Alexandria. A very strange
Not knowing how
medrash.
Yirmiyah passed away.
The Arizal says that Yirmiyah is buried in a cave in Eretz Yisrael. The Barbanel says he ended up in Babylon. But there's one medrash that says he was killed in Mitzrayim. Anyhow, but either way, Tudus the doctor said, Ein para v'chazira. A cow and a pig never leaves from Alexandria. She'ein choischin ha'em shalah. That they don't cut the mother b'shvil that she shouldn't be able to give kids. Egypt doesn't want that the world should be her. It's like if you take the animal out, we're going to
make sure it doesn't.
Make sure it can't have any offspring. So the Gemara says Zutri Aisi Bloy Datayu that Daniel was going to smuggle small ones. The Mitzrayim wouldn't realize. Tana Rabbanon Shloi Shahayu Bois Eitzah. There were three that were involved in this Eitzah. God, Daniel, Nebuchadnezzar. Hashem said, I want Daniel to leave. The loy lemru, people shouldn't say bizchusei is not so. People shouldn't say, you know why Chananya and Azarya survived? Because of Daniel. Hashem didn't want people to say that. So Hashem orchestrated Daniel to be out of town. Daniel said, I better get out of town.
Is the same.
No, different guy. No, what are the chances? No, it's a different guy. The Daniel said, I better get out of here. The Pasuk says, Psila came, gods have to be burnt in fire. Nebuchadnezzar had worshipped Daniel. Daniel thought to himself, if I'm going to be there and I'm going to refuse to bow and I'll be thrown in the fire, God's not going to save me. I'll die as a fruition of the pasuk that gods must be burnt. No, die al Kiddush Hashem. The Maharal asks, so let Daniel, why was he afraid to die al Kiddush Hashem? It bothered him? He wanted
into it.
No. So the Maharal says
that he was killed.
It's gonna destroy the whole miracle. Chananya, Mishael, Azarya. Exactly. If Daniel, it'll confuse everyone. But
Nebuchadnezzar saw Gabriel walking them inside the
right.
And it made a big Kiddush Hashem. If one of them burnt.
Right. Imagine what would people say? The whole miracle. But here's the thing. Nebuchadnezzar said, "Let Daniel leave." People shouldn't say that I burnt my God. Because everyone knows I look at him as a God. I don't want people to say I burned my God. Fine. And how do you know that he worshipped Daniel? Because it says Nebuchadnezzar fell on his face and he bowed down to Daniel. Fine. So what's the re saying? The re holds this was Avodah Zarah. But the re holds Chananya, Mishael, Azarya were able to flee. They were able to flee. Why didn't they flee? Because they learned from the Tzfar, and the frogs could have also fled. Or like the Vilna Gaon said, each one didn't have to be the one, and they chose to do it. We're choosing to do it too. So according to the Ri, it was Avodah Zarah. So going back to the Gemara number 7, the Ri disagreed with his uncle. The Ri says that the Gemara Rav is saying, had they whipped Chananya Mishael Azarya, they would have bowed down to the idol, which means torture is the worst, and you're allowed to do the big three, and then we could make our cheshbon to jump off the Empire State Building. According to Ben Atama, it won't work. According to the Ri, it would work. So when the guy's calling the rabbi about the get, they'll quickly ask him, which one? Quickly, Ben Atama, the Ri, quick. No, God forbid. Anyhow, but so where's this all taking us? Absolutely fascinating. By the way, there's a third way. There's another way of learning the Gemara in Psachim, and that is the Maharam Chalava. The Maharam Chalava was one of the last of the Rishonim. He lived in Spain, Barcelona. He was a kid when the Rashba was a big rabbi, and he considers himself a student of the Rashba, although the Rashba died when he was 10 years old. But he used to and then the Rashba's son became his Rebbe, and so he's born around the year 1300, give or take, and then, he lives. The Maram Chalava says, you know what the Shaila of the Gemara is? Chananya, Mishael, Azarya should have killed themselves. When the Gemara says, why did they let themselves be thrown in the fire? They should have killed themselves. As per the Psak of Rabbeinu Tam and Gittin, that if you know you're going to be forced to do one of the big three, and you're going to have to die, you could just do it yourself. You could just do it yourself. Which is a major chiddush, because Rabbeinu Tam said that if you know the guy won't give you the option.
They're not going to live, right?
But here they knew there's an option, there's the fire.
Yeah,
so I would say maybe the pshat is, if you know they're going to give you an option, but the option maybe is much more painful.
It's torture, back to the torture.
Even if it's temporary torture. But, here we have to, think a little bit. But that's how the Maram Chalava learns. The shah is, why didn't they kill themselves? So it's amazing. Rashi says, Rashi learned they should have bowed down. Rabbeinu Tam says also, because it wasn't Avodah Zarah, it was just an honor. The Ri says they should have run, but Chalava says they should have killed themselves. Fascinating.
Why would killing yourself be better than the guy killing you?
Yes, according to him, it's a very funny Shiloh. You know, Rabbi Chanina ben Tradian, Bepel, when he was being killed, the Masechta Azarya, when he was surrounded by, we said a story before, you know, he told his students, I'm not doing it. Let the Eibush who gave me my soul, let him take it from me. Right? So that's the answer. That's, you know, who needs the tzfardim? There's a general rule that you don't do it to yourself. Rabbeinu Tam's psak was, if you know the goyim won't give you the option, right? They're going to force you to kill someone, so they're going to force you into the Gili Arayas. You know there's not going to be another, so then you do it.
Yeah, but here they weren't forcing them to do an Avera, they were just killing them.
No, bow down to the idol.
No, when they, meaning they weren't going to bow down, so then they were going to get thrown in the furnace. But what does he want them to do first? Before you're getting thrown in the furnace, go and jump off a roof.
Right, that's exactly what we're asking. We're asking, according to Maram Chalava, what was Tudis' question.
Yeah,
it's very strange, but that's how he learns. That's how he learns. Either way. So here's this incredible thing. The Shavus Yankov, Rabbi Yankov Reisher, was a major posek 300 years ago. He passes away, I think, 1727, sometime around there. And he wrote many Sfarim. He wrote the Choik Yaakov and Hilchos Pesach. The Alter Rebbe is quoting him left, right, and center. He was an incredible Rav, and he wrote tons of Sfarim. And his tshuvas, the Shvus Yankov, deals with incredible questions. And one of them is like this. He says, you have a city. The Goyim barge into the city. And they say, everyone must convert or else. Right? 95% of the city have been rounded up. You have one guy who's able to escape. Is he allowed to escape? Or should he join the community? Does he have to escape? Or is he allowed to die? The Shvus Yankov says at first glance, you should not escape. You should let yourself be caught and die. He says it sounds strange. It's the Ri. That's how the Ri learned the story of Chananya, Mishael, Azarya, and the Tzfardim. The Chananya, Mishael, Azarya had the option to run away, right? But they learned from the Tzfardim, no, just like the frogs didn't have to leap in, but they decided to. We're going to do the same thing. And they remained. They could have run like Daniel. That's what the Ri says in the end of number 5. They could have run like Daniel. They chose to stay. That means you're supposed to. You have to learn from the frogs. It's almost like a halacha. It's almost like a halacha.
In any case, what's the whole 95%?
No, so he said, that was the case. Right. The case was about Al Tifresh Min HaTzibur, meaning how far don't separate from the community. If they're all dying, join them.
I know. They all jump off from the roof, you have to too.
How many times
You're right.
did your mother
So
tell you, if everybody else jumps off roof, you follow them?
So the truth is, even Chananya, Mishael, Azarya, assuming that all the Yidden were rounded up there, it could be the Ri only holds they didn't run away because no one else ran away. They said Daniel ran away, but we're going to stay here with everybody else. It could be because he throws in Al Tifresh Min HaTzibur. He does throw it in, but he says in such a case, he says the correct thing. Not only you can remain, you should remain. Don't be a coward and run.
Take the test.
Die!
Yeah, take the test.
That's what the Shvus Yankov says. But hold on, wait. But the Shvus Yankov, he says it's clear the Ri. It's basic Ri. But then, but then he says, wait a second.
Get help.
Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and his son, the Romans are after them. What did they do? They fled for their life.
That was personal.
Yeah, it wasn't.
But it was the Romans.
And it was against all the.
It was time Shmad.
Moshe ran from his life from Paray, right? But that's not running from. But he gives. I'll give you a great example. He quotes a great example. It's a story that appears twice in Shas. Rabbi Yehuda ben Bova, one of the Tanoim, he wanted to give smicha to his students. The Romans said anyone that gives smicha, he's going to be killed. The student will be killed. The city where it happened is killed. The closest city will be killed as well if it's done outside. He found a place between different mountains, equidistant from different cities, and he gave smicha to 6 students. Rabbi Akiva's big students, Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Nehemiah was there as well. And Yehuda ben Bava gave them smicha. Somebody had daubed. The Romans came running. So he tells the students, run for your life. They said, Rebbe, what's going to be with you? He said, I'll be like a rock that can't be overturned. Mashal says what that means is that I won't feel a thing. And they came and they turned him into a sieve. They butchered him till he had blood coming out from everywhere. But the students had run. How'd they run? Apparently you're allowed to run.
That's not running away from a community. It's running away from a person.
No,
That's
it's
the last
running.
guy.
But they were
Not
Shas
fast enough.
Hashmad. It's Shas Hashmad. It's just like this. It's just like this.
Torture?
They also had an assay.
They were all individual people, though.
What?
It wasn't like they were coming after a city.
They were coming after the community of the students.
So, well, if you see,
That's a stretch.
No, you're buying the word I said before. I said it could be the reason only talking about when there's a community. So how would it apply over there? Anyhow, so you're right. But he says like this. He says, therefore he believes you're allowed to run. He says you're allowed to run. Oh, so what's Pshat in Chananya, Mishael, Azarya? He says a fascinating thing. He says, there's a Gemara in Saita. When Yehuda saved Tamar from the fire, a Bashkol came out and said, Yehuda, you saved her from the fire? I promise, your Einiklach, Chananya, Mishael, Azarya, will be spared from the fire. So says the Shvus Yankiv, Chananya, Mishael, Azarya knew their destiny was to be thrown in the fire. They were told they can't run. And he says, because if you don't say that, he asked the same kasha the Shagasarya asked the Vilna Gaon as a kid. He asked the same kasha on Tudas. If not, how did they learn from the frogs? Hashem said the frogs have to go to the ovens. How did they say, right? Because the frogs died, so that means we're allowed to die. The frogs were told to. When were they told to? They were also told. They were also told. When? When the heavenly voice told Yehuda when he saved Tamar, good, your Einiklach will also be saved from the fire.
Yeah, but it's not just told. They
also
also
knew
told
they
they
were
were
gonna
saved.
That's Chidas Kasha. So the Shvus Yankiv therefore says, he paskins like this. You're always supposed to run. Chananya, Mishael, Azarya, Fakir, the very fact they learned from the frogs means they must have been similar. And just like the frogs were told to go in the oven, it must be they were told as well. He has the same kash as the Shagasarya, but he doesn't give the Vilna Gaon's answer. His answer is Atake. There was also a command of Chananya, Mishael, Azarya. And they learned it from the frogs. Who needs the frogs? Just say that, a tradition in their family. But the Shvus Yankov says, but a regular case, you should run. You should run. But he says, if someone doesn't want to run, if you don't want to run, you always have the right to stay. Because the Ashkenazim were more makel. You're allowed to give up, like we saw before. The Rambam, you have to live. But there were many other opinions who were more lenient. The Shvus Yankov has a leniency. Kula. If you want, you could stay, and then when the choice comes, you'll choose death. So that's how he ends his tshuva, which to me sounds so strange. Why couldn't that just be the answer? Just say Chananya, Mishael, Azarya were machmer on themselves, and we don't have to do it. They were just being machmer. But either way, he says that they had this tradition. They knew they had to go in the fire. So comes the chidah and says, I don't get this Shvus Yankov. If they knew about this tradition, that means they knew they were going to survive. So that's not our tradition. Our tradition is they thought they were going to die. Rashi writes in Parshas Emor, if a person gives up his life, he jumps in the fire, thinking he's going to die, like Avram and Nimrod, God will help you, you'll survive. But if you go in thinking you'll survive, like Avram's brother Haran, you'll die. And Rashi there quotes as proof the story Chananya, Mishael, Azarya. Because they said we don't know if God's going to help us, we're going to do it anyways. Yeah. So the Chidah says, wait a second, Mimanavshich, did they know about the tradition or not? If they knew about the tradition that they have to end up in the fire, then they must have known they're going to survive. That was the whole the Baskol told Yehuda good news, not bad news. You saved Tamar, your Einiklach will be saved. What, to say they only heard the first half of the story, they'll be thrown in the fire? It's not logical. That means they heard the whole thing, but that's not our tradition. And if they don't know about it, so then the Shvus Yankov is back to where he started. So here's the thing I just want to show you, that did they know about it or not? There's an absolutely fascinating medrash in number 8. It's Shir Hashirim Rabbah. and it's mamish mind-blowing. I put the whole thing here, I'm not going to read the whole thing. But the Medrash starts off by saying, Chananya, Mishael, Azarya, when they were told by Nebuchadnezzar, order this, order that, and I mean business, I'll kill you, they went to Daniel and they asked, Rabbeinu Daniel, Nebuchadnezzar made it Tselem, and he separated, he chose from every nation 3 people. And we were chosen from the Yidden.
They were the only Yidden there?
So the Gemara in Sanhedrin clearly says many Yidden bowed down. And the Gemara says that after Chananya, Mishael, Azarya went out alive, the Goyim told all the thousands of Yidden that bowed down, look what the Eibusha can do for you. Why'd you guys give in? But the Medrash here says that a different version of the story. Only three were selected from each nation. So they asked Daniel, what do you say? Should we bow or not? Daniel said, don't go to me, go to Yechezkel. So they went to Yechezkel, and they told him and they asked the same question, should we bow or not? He told them, I have a tradition from my teacher Yeshaya. Yeshaya says, Chavi kimat rega, hide for a moment until the anger passes away. He told them to run. Yechezkel told them to run. So they told Yechezkel, if we do, what are people going to say? People won't know that we ran. People will say, you see, every nation bowed, Jews included. No one will know that anyone stood up because we're not going to be there, right? So Yechezkel said, Uma atun orman, what do you suggest? They told him, we want to stay. We want to be, we're going to put a pagam. We're going to be there and not bow down. In order that people should say the Jews don't bow down. So he told them, if that's your opinion, wait a moment, let me ask God. And there's a pasuk in Yechezkel where it says, from the elders of the Jews came to seek God, and they sat before Yechezkel. Azarya. So Yechezkel asked God, Chananya, Mishael, Azarya want to know, they're willing to give up their life, al kedusha shmecha. Will you save them or not? We're in the first of the big lines. Yechezkel asked God, will you save them? Hashem said no. And the Eibusha continued, the Yidden have caused me to destroy the Beis HaMikdash and everything. There's so many Averis. And now they expect miracles to happen. Look in the 4th line of the big lines. At that moment, Yechezkel started crying. He said, Oy Nebuch to the Yidden, the only choshev people are these 3. And this is what God has to say? This is what God has to say? He was crying. In the meantime, Chananya and Azarya come back. And they asked him, no, what did the Eibusha say? He said, God's not going to save you. And they responded, whether he does, whether he doesn't, we're willing to die. And the Medrash says, this is the pshat. If you go back to the psukim in number 1, one pasuk says they were certain God would save them. And then they said, and even not, it's almost like they had a change of heart. So the Medrash says the first pasuk was said before they spoke to Yechezkel, when they thought God would save them. Then they heard it's not going to happen. And they told Nebuchadnezzar nonetheless. After they came to Yechezkel and they heard the answer, they told Nebuchadnezzar, apparently God's not going to save. But either way, we're not going to bow down. After they left, 4 lines from the bottom, it's crazy. After they left, God came back to Yechezkel. He said, Yechezkel, what do you think? I'm not going to save them? Of course I'm going to save them. I just didn't want them to know. The Eibush was always planning to save them. And then we learn out from a pasuk. But Hashem says, but don't tell them. Don't tell them. I want them to go thinking they're going to die, just like Avram. Then I'm going to save them. So it's incredible. So did they know, did they not know? It sounds very clearly, they heard from Yechezkel, God's not saving them. So the Chidah is asking on the Shvus Yankiv that if they knew the tradition from Tamar, it doesn't make any sense. That means they knew they would survive. They clearly didn't know.
They knew they survived until Yechezkel told them no.
Yeah, maybe
but that maybe then the whole Messiah is off. Maybe then how do they know that the first half is still on? Yeah. Who said they have to go in the fire? If Hashem removed the promise, maybe they have to go in the fire. How did they know the first half was still on? That's the Chidah's problem with the Shvus Yankiv. But what time is it? It's really good. So I'm going to end with
the one that said that the community...
The Shvus Yankiv started off by saying that you have to stay and die with the community. That's how he started off, from the reed. But then he says, no, Chananya and Azarya were different. They knew they had to go in the... They were like the frogs who were commanded.
You could say, when the gospel came out, it wasn't like the Abishur was telling you, because you saved them from the fire, now
Yes.
your children are going to go
Yes.
into the fire in order to
No,
be
but
saved.
now
I mean,
they will be
we're
saved.
going to have to go into the fire either way. And because Yehuda saved Tamar, now they're going to be saved.
Okay.
And now the Abishur, because of the basic mikdash, because of things which happened
Ah,
until
ah,
now,
so you're saying
that part was revoked. But they still
You're
have
saying
to get
these were
into the
two
fire.
different.
That's how you go al chasad.
So,
Maybe like Yaakov. He's not
in other
afraid.
words, this wasn't a package deal.
Maybe the promise.
There were
got
two things. One thing is
messed
that
up.
to go in the fire. The promise for safety has been taken away.
But that's not what the way
That's
it
it.
came out.
That's-
It came out, it was
that's way
because
too-
you-
in other
like
words-
you said, it was good news. There
But
was
Hashem
some
doesn't
truth.
go back on good
the
news.
fact
No,
that
he
the
only-
Shavuos Yankov quotes his Gemara and Sotah was a chiddush in the first place, but to start cutting it up
Yeah,
and
to say that
and
one part was
architecting,
go into the fire. It
it's
never
just
said
it's
go
a
into the fire. It says
it's
I'm
it's
gonna
it's a
save
ga-
you.
it's a major
It's not
guess.
that that's a part. It's
It's a
saying that
major
that's just what's gonna
guesswork. It's
happen.
major guesswork. So the truth is, when I learned this, I thought lechatchila is a very simple
Are
answer.
they also descended from David? Mishael?
Yes, from Shevet Yehuda. Are they from David?
necessarily-
I know. If they are, how would that help our discussion?
Just because I know Daniel was. I was just wondering if it was like.
Part of Alexandria.
So here, when I was learning this, I was saying, wait a second. There's a well-known Nemuki Yosef.
Why don't we think of that?
The Nemu, no, you'll hear it. You all know. Everyone. The Nemuki Yosef, Rabbi Yosef Chavive. He was one of the last of the Rishonim in Spain. The Chazon Ish once said, "Et hat sich hereingechabt." He just made it into the Rishonim. So, but he writes that even the Rambam, who says that you never have a choice just to give up your life, and he always says basically do the Avera, keep yourself alive. But if the guy is a very choshev a person, a Gadol b'Yisrael, and he knows that what his decision is going to have a ripple effect amongst the masses, then even then the Rambam would agree that he has the right to give up his life for any Avera. Right? Even if the guy is doing for his own benefit. But the Rambam generally said, you have no right to take your life. It's suicide. But if you're Gadol b'Yisrael, you're allowed to. In fact, the Rebbe uses this to answer for Yosef as well. That Yosef felt that his actions have a ripple effect for all time, and therefore he had the right to put himself in danger even for the smallest mitzvah. The Rebbe quotes this Nemuki Yosef. So I was saying, well, if even the Rambam, if the Nemuki Yosef is saying even the Rambam, who never allows you to take your life, but in the case of an Adam Gadol, he has the right to, so then so too over here. According to the Ri, everyone else, you run. And staying there is not advised, right? But if you're Gadol b'Yisrael, Chamshav Azarya, you see clearly in the Medrash here, they said everything we do is going to be spoken about. They said numerous times, whether we're there, we're not there, the whole world's going to talk about it. So then 100% they had the right to do it, right?
Sure, and that
So,
also-
but hold on,
they said
I
that
need
in
to end
Gemara?
with this. I need to end with this. What?
They said that in the Gemara that everybody's going to find out about it.
In the Medrash in number 8 that we just saw, I read through it very quickly, but if you go through it, they said a few times to Yechezkel, they said if we're not going to be there and no one notices us refusing, right, we're going to lose this moment of Kiddush Hashem. And they said, we want to be there. And Dafka 5 on, so everyone should speak about, they said a few times, in order the whole world should speak.
Ripple effect.
This is the crux of everything. It's the final point, but there's an incredible Medrash in Medrash Tehillim. It was meant to be on the paper. You see, there's a Medrash called Medrash Shoicher Tov. And in the print that I have, there's 2 volumes. One is on Tehillim, one is on Mishlei and Shmuel. I was running out of the house, I took the wrong chelik, so I couldn't make a copy. It's in the Medrash Tehillim part, where it says there famously that if you look in this week's parsha by the Tzfardim, they're going to go in the house, in the kneading bowls, in the ovens. But when it speaks about the Tzfardim leaving, you know what it says? The Tzfardim will leave the houses. It doesn't say the ovens. And then it says all the frogs died, but it doesn't speak about the ovens. It says in the Medrash, not all the frogs died. The ones that went into the ovens were the only ones that survived. Yeah.
It says that in Dar Skin.
Yeah, and the Chizkunik was right. So it's so they mamish survived. Out of all the frogs, they survived, and the old, it's there's an old word that when it comes to the dogs, because the dogs didn't bark in next week's parsha and Parshas Boy, so we forever give them a treifa. A treifa we give to the dogs, right? But when it comes to the frogs jumping in the oven, we don't give them food and everything. So what's the old word? It's easier to jump into an oven than to hold yourself back from speaking when you really want to say something. But ultimately, those frogs that went in the oven, they didn't die. They were dafka the ones that survived. So it's almost like the Rashi in Parshas Emor. All the other frogs said, I'm not going in the oven, let the other guy go. Which means they expected to survive. That's like Haran. Yeah, then you die. Those that went in the oven expecting to die were the ones that survived. When we say Chananya, Mishael, Azarya, look back at the frogs and made their decision. Was it also based on this medrash? I remember years ago, I had a whole new pshat in the Gemara, and then I found out that already hundreds of years ago people stole my pshat from me. The pshat in the Gemara and Psakim of Chananya, Mishael, Azarya, the shaila was, why did they decide? They didn't have to die. Like all the Perushim we said, either they could have run away, or like Rabbeinu Tam says the Bechlal wasn't really Avodah Zarah. Or like Rashi says that this opinion holds that it was in private and they could have bowed down. So what did they learn from the frogs that convinced them to die? The fact that they knew that they wouldn't. It wasn't suicide. They knew that if the frogs who b'chlal have no mitzvah to sanctify God's name, and they did a crazy thing, but the Eibishter protected them, us who b'chlal we have a mitzvah, for sure we're going to be protected. So the question was, what were they thinking at suicide? The answer is no, they knew they would survive.
What about everyone?
The problem is, wait a second, that means they knew they would survive. So we're back to the Shiloh, the debate of the Chidah and the Shvus Yankov, did they know or didn't they know? And if they knew they would survive, the whole Rashi in Parshas Emor, Rashi says you have to be like Avraham, think you're going to die, not like Haran. And he learned from Chananya, Mishael, Azarya. So comes Reb Chaim Shmulevitz, and we'll finish with this. Chaim Shmulevitz was Rosh Hashiva in Eretz Yisrael. He was a big Baal Musar. And he says like this. You know what Haran did? When Haran allowed himself to be thrown in the fire, he wasn't hoping to survive. Right? He didn't jump in knowing he would survive. He jumped in on condition that he would survive. That and only because of that did he jump in. Chananya, Mishael, Azarya knew they would survive, he says. They had a tradition, like from the Gemara in Saita, or they learned from the frogs. But they told Nebuchadnezzar, that's not why we're jumping in. We would jump in even if not. And he goes back to the Psukim and says, that's why. First they tell Nebuchadnezzar, God's going to save us. And then they said, and even not. What's the pshat? Even if he wouldn't. They knew they would be saved. And that's why it wasn't suicide. But they were saying, even if not, we would still do it. That's the difference. So if someone's Moser Nefesh, knowing they would die, but they would have done it anyhow.
Knowing they would live. And still
Knowing they would live, but they would have done it anyhow, they're still protected. The issue is like Haran, when you do it because and only because you know you're going to live. So that's the word. So in other words, like this, if you go with this path, so the Shvus Yankov is now kind of defended from the Chidah. Did they know or didn't they know? They knew. They had this tradition. Yechezkel told them not. So apparently they realized that the Eibishter wants them to do it not knowing they would be saved. But they knew there was still a tradition. Haraya, the moment they left the front door, the moment they left they realized, they realized God wants them not to do it only because they would be saved. God wants them in their heart.
That very thought process throws off the whole Yechezkel. Yechezkel told them you're not going to live.
So they had a tradition.
Exactly. It's not just a tradition.
No. He told them the Eibishter said, but the Eibishter can always backtrack on a bad decree. First,
that's what they're relying on.
Daniel sent them to Yechezkel.
And Yechezkel's telling them you're not going to live.
Now they're hearing nothing. They're hearing nothing. They're hearing Yechezkel.
So what did they?
Yechezkel's not a medrash. He's a Navi. You know, it's
no. So they knew the Eibishter wants them to hear that they're not going to survive. The Eibishter wanted them to hear that they're not going to survive. In order for them to engender, it could be before they. You know what? I'll tell you even better. No, before they came to Yechezkel, they thought when they spoke to Daniel, their first question: are we going to survive or not? Why do they want to know? At that point, it sounds like they would only do it if they knew for sure. So the Eibishter tells Yechezkel, tell them no.
So then, but they.
I want them to engender in their hearts.
We know Yecheskel's really telling us no, because then we can have the credit that the whole thing is off.
No, I think this makes a lot of sense.
They knew that he knew that they knew.
Yeah, but they're faking themselves.
No, they had to they had to really create. They had to ready their mind. Fakir, these people were emissaries people. No.
You know his line?
No.
They're doing it either way. They don't need Yecheskel at all. To do the whole thing of telling them no, so that they're doing it for their attention.
When they were told no, what they did, they understood that the Eibishter wants them to do it regardless, not because they're gonna. It happens to be that they had a tradition in their father's house that they learned from the Tzfardim that God's gonna come in. They learned from the Tzfardim God's gonna save them in the nick of time, anyways. They had a tradition from their father.
Definitely didn't play a factor.
But they knew that God did not want them.
But don't we want to
say
think
something
about
that.
them? That they went in with Mesiras Nefesh?
They
were ready for it.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. That was the message Yecheskel told them. That was the message Yecheskel told them.
But we really know Yecheskel's just saying that so I can get credit. That's what you're saying, is that they really do know. They had no doubt. They knew Yecheskel was only saying it, according to what you're saying, is they knew
in order that they should engender inside themselves a feeling.
Mendy, if it was that obvious,
I can't do that if I know I'm gonna live.
Mendy,
I can't fake myself.
But if you're Chananya, Mishael, Azarya, you could.
Mendy.
Then why Yecheskel has to
tell them? By the way, I just want to say one thing. The issue that you have is only the way I'm trying to fit it with the Medrash number 8. If you get rid of that Medrash, right, it's still a very geschmacker way of learning the Gemara and Psachim in number 2. What they learned from the Tzfardim was that this wouldn't be suicide, right?
For sure, but
all I'm trying to do is say that what Yecheskel's mission from God was to make sure that they don't do this conditional to their safety.
Yeah, so I'm saying
as far as they're concerned, they should imagine they're not going to survive. And that should be in their mind.
And that's the second part of their statement. Say, you know what, at first we thought we were going to live, but now we're telling you, you know what, Nebuchadnezzar, that's so much more honorable. Even if we're not going to live, even though Yecheskel said we're done, we're still jumping into the fire, and I'm still not bowing down. No,
did they expect to die?
They expect, yes, that's the second part, even if Hashem tells us we're not going to live.
But the Tzfardim didn't die.
So they're not the Tzfardim.
They're learning from the Tzfardim.
No, they're learning the idea of following Hashem. Exactly. Not everybody gets saved by the bear.
Not the fact that the Tzfardim lives is not according to everybody.
No, I think
right. This is according to. All right. Hello. The first three. Hello. The first 3 quarters of the shir thing was successful.
It's a lot more Kiddush Hashem. It's a lot more meaningful. It's a lot more of a sacrifice. There's no sacrifice. There's no sacrifice in
never they were ready to do it. If not,
you're ready.
No, they asked him.
We're getting self-determined right now.
They asked us who they wish to save us.
You know you're living.
They asked him the words were.
They are really saying.
They can say what they want. There is no sacrifice. You do not sacrifice when you know you're gonna live and you're gonna jump off that cliff.
If you were ready to die,
if you're ready to die
anyway,
so that's
great.
What should they do?
No.
You didn't practically sacrifice. You would have from today till tomorrow, but you didn't.
Here,
if you would have done it anyway,
did you sacrifice?
Did you sacrifice?
You said theoretically.
No, it isn't.
Will you protect them or not? On their behalf. No. Because they
that's why
he says hold on.
Exactly. Because it's a willingness.
Okay.
That's
because you jumped off the roof. You did not sacrifice. You knew you were gonna live. That's the point. That's a separate issue. You were ready to do it. You
So they want to make
that's not a sacrifice. No, it isn't. That's not. No, it's not. No, it's not. It's clearly not. That's the whole point of not knowing. That's why Hashem wanted Yecheskel to tell them no. Because the actual sacrifice,
if you look back, when they went back to Yecheskel and they asked, what did God say?
Which is why Hashem told
Hashem said, "I'm not going to save you." Because that was the question.
Right, no, but I'm saying if you take it a step further, about the halakha aspect is that even if God's not going to save you, are you allowed to do it because you're giving up your life as opposed to running away? Which means that look at the elementary way. Because it says run away. Okay, well, let me ask you what's gonna happen, right? Are you gonna be saved, or are you not
No,
gonna be saved?
why?
What?
They don't want to know that. So why'd they come back to find out? Like that.
They didn't come back.
They did. No, it did. They left. They left.
and they came back.
Yeah, they came back to find out the answer to their
Well,
question.
because Yechezkel said,
Kivan
wait,
the
because
Aso,
Yechezkel
when they-
said,
Avram,
wait
don't
until
worry,
I
I'm not
ask,
really
right?
gonna. The last second,
Yeah,
I'm
but
gonna
what
pull
was
an
he
angel.
asking?
Avram sacrificed.
No,
He didn't
because
think
Yechezkel-
about it.
that's
He
what was
would have
happening.
done
It
it
wasn't-
maybe in his. He did. He was ready to sacrifice and he pulled the knife.
So the question was, will we
Practice.
survive?
He just
That's not
fucked
true.
himself.
He did.
literally just busted
He
himself.
did. He pulled the knife. He pulled out the
But
knife.
he didn't kill the kid.
So what?
So
He
then
didn't
that
have
wasn't
to
that wasn't
anything
that wasn't
about
said.
that.
No,
Them
he didn't actually kill.
He didn't have to.
But that's
not what
they
Hashem
have to.
said.
When they
They
came
have
back,
to.
they asked him,
That's
what
what
did God
said.
tell you? He said, you're not
No,
going
he
to
didn't.
Yes, he
that's
did.
not
Take
saving
your
you.
knife
And
and
kill
go
the
up to
kid.
the mountain
That was-
and sacrifice.
He didn't sacrifice him. He didn't sacrifice him.
They were
He didn't sacrifice him.
That's what Hashem said.
He didn't sacrifice.
For them, it was
But did he actually sacrifice? But did he actually sacrifice?
They wanted to go there. Were they allowed to do that?
Yes, he did.
No, he didn't.
Yes, he did.
He didn't actually kill him.
He sacrificed
Well,
his
because you
willingness.
Oh, his willingness.
That's all Hashem. Hashem didn't ask
Because
Chananya, Mishael, and Azarya, are you willing to do it? That's not what Hashem did. No, he didn't. He said, no, he didn't. No, he didn't.
Open up the fucking Bible.
That's the whole point. Hashem said, I give it to you.
He told them, wait for me, wait.
Later he told him, don't kill him.
No, that's not
came
what
over there,
happened.
they said,
Hashem
Hashem
said they
never
want to know
told
if
you
they
to kill your son.
I mean,
So
that's
that's
what
all
it's
wrong.
saying.
Learn it.
And so, okay, so now I gotta ask,
Willingness is what we love.
you
Is
went
what
to the
we
Asia,
love.
you wanted to go to the Asia.
No, it doesn't. They never had. That's not what Hashem. That's not what.
No, they went to a
Navi.
They didn't let us do it.
They said that to Cheskel. I want them to think they're going to
And
die.
Daniel said,
I want
forget
them
me,
to
I'm not with the
sacrifice
nation,
without
go to the
knowing
Navi.
the answer.
Yeah, because it wasn't about
The question is whether they'll survive or not.
It's not about talking to the Asia. It's about if it's
I
the right thing to do or not.
And Bechal Yechezkel never gave them
His shot is that they knew Yecheskel was